Greetings, this is Father Michael with our word of the week. Happy Easter, everyone. This Easter word is Othonion. O-T-H, onion, Othonion. It's a Greek word that means linen or wrapping. Recently, I had someone ask me, how do we know that Jesus rose from the dead? And it's an important question. In fact, it might be the most important question someone might ask. Why? Because it's at the foundation of our faith. If, St. Paul says, Jesus does not rise from the dead, and therefore if we don't rise from the dead, then we are the most miserable and pitiable people on the earth, right? In other words, the question of the reality of Jesus' resurrection and then the implication for us is the most crucial question we might ask. So how do we know Jesus did rise from the dead? How do we know that the resurrection is real? And there's lots of reasons, but you have to start with that historical account, the eyewitness evidence. We hear in the Gospel of John that when Mary Magdalene comes to the tomb and it's empty and sees Christ and the angels and so forth, they run back, and what happens? Peter and John go. And when they arrive, they find the tomb and it's empty. You might say, well, so what? An empty tomb. There's lots of reasons why it might be empty. The empty tomb is not the sole reason for the resurrection from an eyewitness account. In fact, the Catechism says it's not the empty tomb, but here it is, one word, it's the condition of the empty tomb that gives rise to their faith. What does the Catechism mean? Well, consider the story again. Peter and John run. John runs a little faster, a little more youthful, a little less pounds in his old age. And what does he do? He stoops in, very historically accurate. The tomb would have been not at kind of man's height, but it would have been a little bit lower. He had to stoop in, and he doesn't see anything. But when he comes in, what does he see? He sees the Othonia, the linen wrappings, the wrappings that would have been, indeed, the burial shroud of Jesus. And when he sees them, it says they are lying flat. They are completely, if you will, flat on the tomb and the stone, but still tied up. In other words, it would be like getting a package and then what's inside the package simply disappears and the package deflates, right? It's like deflated linens that are still tied up. And not only that, the sudarion, or the face covering, is neatly folded in another place. In other words, when Peter and John come in to that empty tomb, they don't simply experience an absence of something, but in the very linens and their arrangement, the way that they're still tied and then neatly folded is the face garment or the face linen of Christ. They see human activity at work. They see signs of life. In the midst of the absence, they see signs of life. And St. John says they go from seeing the arrangement of the linens, in terms of seeing as in physical sight, to a kind of understanding that when they see how they're arranged, that maybe Jesus, who had prophesied his resurrection, might be right, to ultimately together awakening in a sense of faith. The first sparks of faith are caused by the condition of the linens in the empty tomb. It's a wonderful image for us because in our lives, there are lots of empty tombs. That is, there are lots of places where we want God to be or expect to find a lifeless sense of God's presence. And so we simply say God doesn't care. In the prayers I offer, in the quest I make, in those difficulties and traumas of my life, God seems to be empty, absent, not responding, and therefore my life is bereft of that divine goodness or blessing. Here's the Easter challenge for us. The truth that is precisely in the absence of Christ's visible presence that we can see the linens, the condition of signs of life in our lives. Let's look for those linen of love. Let's look for those signs of life, even amidst failed relationships, a lack of forgiveness, ill health or struggle with our state or physicality in life. All of these things can, no doubt, certainly be trials and tribulations, but they can also be places where we discover the presence of the risen Lord. I think even in the Eucharist, it looks like just a little wafer. The blood of Christ appears and to all intents and purposes tastes like wine. And yet we know, because of the Last Supper, because of the deepness of our faith, that it's truly the resurrected presence of Christ that we consume, and more specifically and precisely consumes us, transforms us. Let's look for those signs of life. Let us look for the linen of love in our life, especially in places where God feels absent, that we might experience the joy of the resurrection. Christ is risen. Truly he is risen. Amen. Amen. If you're enjoying these videos, do like, comment, subscribe. Also go to our website. May the Lord indeed radiate in your life, and may we radiate the joy of the gospel here in the heart of the city.